predictors of social aggression, there is a big discrepancy in terms of the work by Nikki Crick on relational aggression and the work by Marion Underwood on social aggression. Crick for a long time argued that there was no gender difference, that boys and girls were equally as likely to display relational aggression, versus Underwood has found consistently that girls will display higher levels of social aggression. Boys and men certainly still do socially aggressive acts, but compared to girls and women, it is dwarfed. And so this gender difference has been found by most people to favoring more girls and women displaying social aggression. And the people who display more social aggression, they tend to have a high level of social competence. They understand other people's perspectives. They understand what would hurt them. They can understand and fantasize, and they have the cognitive components of empathy in that they understand how other people are going to react and they understand what other people want. So it's not that they have a lack of social skill. So they have good perspective-taking skills and good social cognition. We also find that some people very high in social aggression are also very high in prosocial behaviors, but they use both selectively. So they'll use prosocial behaviors to increase their status and bond with people who are more alpha than them, and they'll also use social aggression to cut and sever relationships with people who are lower than them on the chain of command. We find that people that are very, very high in social aggression tend to also be high in indices of narcissism and indices of competitiveness, showing into that they believe that they are higher of status and they are worthiness of having a higher status, and they have to show contempt and dislike to people they feel are below them. So those are some of the predictors. Now, in terms of the outcomes, we find that the outcomes of social aggression are pretty negative, and not just for those who are on the defense, but also those who are on the attack. We find that individuals who display more socially aggressive behaviors tend to have a more hostile cognitive bias. They tend to have more paranoia and assume that other people are out to get them. It's the idea if they're always trying to find ways to attack other people, they may always be using their social perspective skills to assume and anticipate when other people will try and get them. We also find that teenagers that show higher levels of social aggressive behavior tend to go on to have higher levels of anxiety and depression. And those who are extremely high in socially aggressive behavior may be at risk of developing diagnoses such as borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. I have in here the prickly cactus because they assume the whole world's out to get them, and the whole world's a prickly, thorny trap, if you will. And the arrows are kind of to demonstrate they get in this cycle of things where they just feel that this is how you act to others. This is your relationship skills, that you can't trust anybody, and everyone's out to manipulate you because you're out to manipulate them. So it's not a really happy place to be. Now, how do we measure social aggression? Well, it's really complicated. For one thing, using observations to measure social aggression is kind of problematic. We have found that people that are really, really skilled in social competence and are socially aggressive, they hide it well. Underwood had one study in particular where she had video recordings on playgrounds, and a socially aggressive girl would push another girl and then spin around and say to the teacher, oh, there's something wrong with her. And the teacher really believed that the aggressor was actually a prosocial bystander. So there's a lot of trickiness going on here. And so because of that, we can't really rely on observations unless we have really large funds to do really intensive video recordings. We also know that teacher biases and parent biases tend to assume that their socially aggressive kids are actually just very prosocial and very socially adept. So that also hides it. And self-report surveys tend to really hang us high and dry because no one really likes to admit that they are socially aggressive. And this falls really victim to the social desirability bias. So how do we do it? Well, peer relationships, not just from the victims, but from other peers that are on the sidelines. So doing things like the peer-rated or self-report rated child behavior checklist, or doing things like the extended class play can really help. If we're going to do self-reported measures, some of the ways we like to do is less of a survey report and more of send us examples of your conversations. So there have been work where teens have actually sent in their text message chains, and researchers have coded how socially aggressive those text message chains were, if they're gossiping about other people, if they're insulting one another, what have you, and who was allowed on there versus who wasn't. And so looking at information like that and things that are less prone to perspective, that are slightly more objective, can be helped.